Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Adopted Mom Podcast Thursday live edition. I still don't know what to call this. Please drop some suggestions. But every Thursday, I like to hop on here to Facebook Live and just talk about a topic. I'd love some suggestions on what you want to talk about. But tonight, we're going to talk about trauma because trauma is a you-know-what. So, let me post, but before we do that, I have a couple of announcements, and I was trying to see if I could put them on here. Let's see here. There we go. So yes, comment below to join the discussion. Please do that. I love getting feedback. I love responding to questions and comments and yeah, that happened to me too, and all of that stuff. You have no idea how happy it makes me. So please join the discussion. On another note, and I'm going to say this and then type it, so forgive me. I'm still learning how to multitask with this whole Facebook Live thing. I really like talking, really not so great at the technology part. That's why I have an amazing husband. So, number one, if you would like to subscribe to the Adoptive Mom Podcast, type the word yes in the comments. That's all you have to do. And then we will take care of the rest. So, yes, Y-E-S, just type the word yes in the comments. Boom. Yep, spelled everything right. Woohoo! Okay, second of all, if you would like to receive show notes from this talk right here, that's about to happen, just type the word notes in the comments. That's all you have to do. We will take care of the rest. How cool is that? So just type the word notes in the comments. Boom. Thanks, Erica Brenson. I bet you're about to be subscribed to the podcast, and that makes me so happy. So, trauma. Like I said, that's not a super fun topic, but it's so important. And it's so important that this is actually going to be a 2-part series. So join us back next week to finish this discussion on trauma. But please comment and join the discussion for tonight as well. Tonight, we're just going to be covering some basics. So on that note, let's jump in. So trauma is defined as deeply distressing or disturbing experience. Now, that's a small portion of the point for tonight, but I feel like it's important to grasp a good basic definition of something that rocks our world so much as adoptive parents. This is one of my biggest regrets, not being more trauma informed. And yes, I'm a person who believes in regrets. I think we can have them and learn from them at the same time. Trauma is something I thought very little about before we had kids or adopted them. It was a word I vaguely knew and kind of remembered from training. What I didn't understand was that in and of itself, it would become the center of my parenting consideration going forward. As soon as Clark, our teenager, stepped foot in our home, I was knocked off my feet by this random entity called trauma. To put this in a greater perspective, I'm going to say something harsh and controversial. People often ask me if I could do it all over again, would I? And my answer is not a simple yes or no, but it's one that has a contingency. If I could go back and do it all over again with the exact amount of knowledge that I had going in, I would not. Let that sink in for a second. However, if I could go back with even my current lack of trauma training, lacking trauma training, I would do it over and over and over again. I say this not to scare or discourage anyone, but to emphasize the importance of this topic. And for those of you who are just now jumping in and joining us, like I said earlier, you can type the word yes, Y-E-S, in the comments to subscribe to the podcast. And I think it says it on the screen, but to receive notes of our discussion, just type the word notes in the comments. So, trauma is a huge deal. It's like the singular most important topic that has thing that's affected our parenting of our adopted kids. So on that note, here are a few things that I quickly learned about our word of the day, trauma. So first of all, trauma can hide for years before manifesting itself suddenly and without warning. Trauma doesn't care who did the traumatizing. It will suck the life out of anyone and everyone in its wake. Trauma rewires the actual brain in ways that you can actually see with your eyeballs, under a microscope, of course. It physically changes our kids' fear receptors to fire when they shouldn't, causing its victims to be constantly stressed and reactive even when they are not in danger. Trauma tells us that everything is hopeless, and why are we even doing this? And we should just give up. Trauma changes the way our kids see the world. It takes away life skills like future planning because every ounce of energy is being put into literally surviving this moment. And life skills like relating to other people. Every person they come in contact with has to go through multiple layers of filters, such as, will this person hurt me? Will this person expect too much out of me? What kind of mask does this person need to see from me? How can I manipulate this person into not hurting me? How can I most effectively make this person believe that I am fine? And many, many, many others. So if you guys have comments along the way, please drop them in. So another thing about trauma, it tells us that we're alone in our circumstances. We're isolated from normalcy. It tells us that our lives will never look like our friends who only have biological children. It tells us that no one will ever understand, and we should just suck it up and deal with it. Trauma causes our kids' actual bodies to change and react in unpredictable ways to simple things like texture, noise, physical pain, and many more. Trauma robs us of joy and it rips us from community. It is lonely, infuriating, and out of our control as parents. It defies reason and logic, and it changes too quickly to be figured out. So that's just a brief list of just things that I've noticed about trauma, things that I've learned about trauma. I'm going to pour myself some tea really quick, but does anyone so far, you have any comments or questions or me toos? So if all of this, if it doesn't sound like the enemy himself, I'm not sure what does. There is so much spiritual warfare going on with our kids, and Satan wants nothing more than to use their trauma to damage us and our views of them. And it's so incredibly important to be informed. So let's talk about some different kinds of trauma. Oh, let's see. Erica said, love what you said about doing it all over again. Yes, absolutely. And that's harsh. And I feel guilt over that answer because a lot of people want you to say, oh yes, I love my kids. And it's not that I don't, but I could have saved our family so much trauma. And we'll get to that in a little bit, just about the different kinds of trauma. But I could have saved myself and our kids and everyone so much if I had just been more educated on this issue. And I think that in training, we like to brush it off and act like that's not going to happen to us, or that's not that big of a deal, or that's only in extreme cases. But no, almost every single adopted kid has some kind of trauma, almost every single one. And it may not affect them at first. That's the first one. It can lay dormant for years before presenting. Learning as we go is vital for survival. Amen, sister. Absolutely. So let's talk about some different types of trauma. So the first one's pretty broad. So that's trauma that comes from abuse. The basic forms are sexual, physical, verbal, and neglect. Again, those are the basic forms. Now going into this, I was positive that the most damaging and far-reaching form must surely be sexual abuse followed by physical abuse. And those are horrendous and undeserving without doubt. But I found that often neglect can damage a person's soul much more meaningfully. Let me explain. If someone is being physically abused, they are at the very least seen and told that they affect the abuser's life in some way, even negatively. When a child is severely neglected, it begins to shape how the person sees themselves in their very core. They begin to see that they are not even worthy of being abused. They literally do not matter in this world. And I have seen with my own eyes how very damaging that can be even years and years later. I want to again emphasize that every single ounce of abuse is uncalled for in every way. But as a parent of children with multiple abuses, I wish I had known how incredibly more impactful their neglect was than some other forms of abuse. Another form is witnessing any of these abuses happening to another person, a sibling, a mother. This can absolutely impact how our kids see their siblings if they stayed together after adoption, or their new adoptive siblings, or their adoptive parents, and so many more. It definitely hits home for me just in how it shapes your view of family. So any comments on any of that stuff? Wow, that's really hot. Whew. So the last form of abuse that I just want to talk about tonight is about trauma. It's secondary trauma. This is the trauma that we as parents can incur from our children's behaviors because of their trauma. And I know that's a tongue twister. This stuff is so hard. And when you're being beaten up emotionally and sometimes physically by these kids' trauma-based behaviors, it's going to 100% affect us long term. I am always shocked at how my body goes into defense mode and my fear receptors start firing like cannons at the slightest hint of an outburst. Or when I'm in a situation when I feel like I'll be judged for my child's behavior and that so few will understand. Or when I'm placed in a situation where I have to defend their horrible behavior, because that sucks. Or I have to defend it to someone or explain it to someone who's going to brush me off for not trying whatever parenting technique they think I should. That also sucks. This is the type of trauma that most affects us as parents. As much as we want to be super mom and believe that we can withstand the tantrums and the outbursts and manipulations and speak the truth to ourselves, the enemy is so incredibly crafty that it's disgusting. And we all fall prey to his tactics on the daily. Because this is so intricate an issue, I'm making this a 2-part series, like I said at the beginning. And I'm bringing in an expert to discuss with next week. I'm excited to bring in Rebecca Price to the discussion. Becca is a licensed therapist and is incredibly knowledgeable on the brain and the effects of trauma. If you have not listened to her episode in season 1, run, don't walk, and listen to it now. I'm going to link to that in the comments after I finish the broadcast. Trying to catch up on comments. Okay. I think the dings are delayed a little bit. Anyway, I'm going to link to those in the comments. And I'm also linking to an incredible article on secondary trauma. It's specifically geared toward parents of kids with RAD, which is real life for a lot of us, but it applies to any kid with trauma. So yeah, I really want to know what you guys think. If this is something that you guys are also dealing with, I mean, I know that you have to be because we're all crazy if we're doing this adoption thing. Okay, so yeah. Like I said at the beginning, I'm going to keep saying it. If you want to subscribe to the Adoptive Mom podcast, which you totally should, type in yes, Y-E-S in the comments. If you want to get notes from this talk, type in notes in the comments. Super simple, and we'll take care of the rest. Randy says, the trauma that we and our children would endure in pursuing adoption is not something we were prepared or even trained for. Absolutely. I think that trauma training is something that we as potential adoptive parents and adoptive parents have to seek out. And there's just so much depth to it. There's so much depth to it. And I think that there's a little bit of people not wanting to scare people off that happens. And so we are not as informed as we'd like to be. And something I've figured out is just that I would have rather have known. I mean, I might have been scared off. I don't know how I would have reacted, but I wish I'd been more prepared. On another note, I mean, in our situation, it was kind of like what I talked about earlier. Our oldest, especially, his trauma lay dormant for years and years, and no one knew about it. No one knew to tell us. It wasn't that they had information they were holding out on. It was just that they didn't know. He was presenting as fine. That was one of those filters, you know. He was, how can I manipulate these people into thinking that I'm fine? And it wasn't until he got into a scary situation, a family, that it came out. And then we were knocked off our feet. And that's not his fault. There are things that are his fault. I'm not saying that he is completely blameless. I'm just saying that the trauma was obviously not his fault, and his fear behavior was not his fault. It was just a sucky situation, and we had to learn as we went, and we made a lot of mistakes. And I'm sure that there are lots of other parents that can say the same thing, just that they made so many mistakes because they didn't know. And I don't know, that's a little bit my mission. I really want people, if they're thinking about it, when they ask me, hey, we're thinking about adoption, what do you think? And I'm like, become trauma trained. And again, I don't say that to scare people, but I wish I would have known. I think that I would have been a better parent because of it. Randy, do you agree? Do you think that you would have been a better parent because of it, or do you think it would have scared you off? I'm gonna take another drink, see if my tea has calmed down or cooled down. I see people typing in notes. That makes me so happy. If there are any typos in the notes, I'm really sorry. I wrote this at Chick-fil-A and it was really loud. Well, I finished it at Chick-fil-A. I wrote it earlier, but anyway. Yeah. What else, guys? What other comments or questions you have? Are you excited to hear from Becca? If you've heard her episode, she's amazing. She's so amazing. She's the first person that really taught us about this stuff. She actually works with a nonprofit in the area, and she works for a nonprofit in the area, and she's a licensed counselor at a counseling office that is for profit, obviously. And she just really, really knows her stuff. And she actually came to our house when we were at the end of our ropes and explained all of this trauma stuff to us. And it just blew our minds. Like, we had no idea. So Erica, I'm curious, what is your, just a snapshot of your adoption story? How many adopted kiddos do you have? I'm so glad you agree. I need more people to join this mission of helping people realize the importance of becoming trauma trained. So I'll have to type in, I'll put these links to that article and to Becca's episode in the comments after the thing. 1 adopted 4 years ago at birth, 3 adopted in November, siblings. Dang, girl. They moved in last March. So you have 4 adopted kiddos. That's a lot. Wow. Amazing. That's amazing. How old are your 3 adopted ones? Are they under 10 or are they teenagers? Let's see. Randy says, I think we might be in a different place than we are now. Closed home to heal, seek, counsel, train. Absolutely. And that's necessary. You have to take care of your family. And I think that's why it's so important, because I don't know. I think, like I said, you have to take care of your family on one side, and then on the other side, it's so hard to think that things could have been different. You know what I mean? 9, 4, 4, and 2. Oh my goodness. So are the 4-year-olds twins? No, wait, they're not. Wait, that's the one. So you have accidental twins too? Good job. High five. We have, next month we will have 2 2-year-olds, and they are not biologically related. They're 5 months apart, but they'll be in the same class in school and everything. So, yeah, it's really crazy to have 2 kids that are the same age that are not twins. Insane. But it's really fun to meet other adoptive mamas who are in the same boat. Randy, thanks for sharing, girl. I love this discussion. This is great. 6 months apart, but same grade. Yep. We have it's end of October, mid-April, so it's like 5.5 months. So, but no summer birthdays, so they will most definitely be in the same grade. So crazy. Anyway, well, so I think I'm going to go ahead and sign off for tonight. But I had so much fun talking to you guys and discussing this stuff with you. I mean, as much fun as discussing trauma can be, but let's keep the conversation going. If you're watching this on the repeat, please leave some comments. Let's join this discussion. I'm going to keep checking back. I'll engage with you for sure. And don't forget, like it says on here, type yes to subscribe to the podcast and type notes to receive show notes that probably have some typos from tonight's show. But I'm just so grateful for you guys engaging in discussion and joining in with me every Thursday. This has been really fun, and I just love the support. So thank you guys so much. Have a good night.